She was just a young and innocent maid in a mansion full of secrets. He was her boss, a cold, powerful millionaire, and dangerously observant. She whispered, "He must be bad in bed," thinking no one was listening. If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment saying where you're listening. The wind that swept across the fields of the Lake District carried more than the mountain's dampness. It carried whispers of a time when the Caldwells were just another prosperous family from the English countryside, before they became an urban legend among the London elite. The mansion that rose atop the hill, with its Gothic towers defying the temperate sky, didn't seem to belong to that part of England. It was as if someone had torn a European castle from its roots and planted it on English soil, allowing native plants to grow wild around its stone walls. Amelia Sutton knew every brick of that edifice. She had arrived there 3 years prior, her eyes still swollen from weeping over the death of the grandmother who had raised her. Mrs. Clara had been strict, severe, but she was all that remained of a family for the orphaned girl who had grown up hearing only half-whispers about a mother who got lost in the world and a father who never truly existed. The domestic helper position at Caldwell Manor had come through the town's vicar, who knew the young woman's plight and understood she needed a roof over her head and an income. From the very first day, Amelia sensed that the house breathed differently. It wasn't just the endless corridors, the crystal chandeliers that cast dancing shadows on the walls, or the portraits of ancestors with eyes that seemed to follow those who passed. It was something deeper, as if the very structure of the manor held memories that preferred to remain buried. The master of the house, Donovan Caldwell, was a figure who inspired as much fascination as apprehension. The tall, broad-shouldered, with impeccably groomed black hair, he possessed the kind of beauty that was unsettling in its almost artificial perfection. His eyes were such an intense blue that they were disturbing, especially when fixed on someone with that calculated intensity he had perfected over the years. At 35, Donovan commanded a financial empire that stretched from London to Manchester, yet he rarely left the estate. Amelia had quickly learned the unwritten rules of the house. Never look directly at Mr. Caldwell when he passed through the corridors. Always keep her voice low, especially near the study where he spent most of his time. Never ask questions about the rooms in the East Wing, which had remained locked since before her arrival. And, above all, never show curiosity about the voices that sometimes echoed from the old chapel on the estate during the early hours of the morning. Amelia's routine was predictable and comforting in its simplicity. She woke before sunrise, prepared breakfast alongside Eleanor, the cook who had worked there for over 20 years, and then dedicated herself to cleaning the main rooms. Her movements were silent, almost feline, a result of a childhood where drawing attention meant attracting trouble. She had become an expert at being invisible, but Donovan saw her. Amelia didn't know it, but he watched her more than he should have, intrigued by that young woman who seemed to carry a weight disproportionate to her age. There was something in the way she handled the house's objects, always with an almost reverent delicacy, as if she understood the sentimental value behind each piece. Unlike the other maids who performed their duties mechanically, Amelia seemed genuinely interested in the story each room told. It was a March afternoon, with the heat still intense despite the approaching autumn, when Amelia encountered Donovan for the first time in a situation that wasn't merely formal. She was in the inner garden, a private area at the center of the mansion, surrounded by windows from the upper floors. She thought she was alone when she began softly singing a song her grandmother used to hum while sewing. "That song is very old," a voice said behind her, making her jump violently. Amelia turned, her hands already trembling, and her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, I didn't know you were—" "You don't have to stop," he interrupted, approaching slowly. He wore a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark dress trousers, a more casual version than she was accustomed to seeing. "My mother used to sing that same song." The silence that followed was charged with a tension Amelia didn't know how to interpret. It was the first time she had heard Donovan mention any family member, and the momentary vulnerability in his voice made her even more nervous. "Please forgive me. Sir, I shouldn't be here at this hour," she murmured, already moving away towards the door. "Amelia," he called, and she froze in place. It was the first time he had called her by name. "How long have you worked here?" 3 years, sir." And in all that time, you've never shown curiosity about our family? About the history of this house? The question was a trap, and Amelia knew it. Any answer could be interpreted as insubordination or worse, as inappropriate interest in her employer's personal affairs. "It's not my place to question or speculate about my employer's lives," she replied carefully. Donovan chuckled, but it was a sound devoid of mirth, very diplomatic. "Eleanor told me you're different from the other girls who have worked here. I hope in the best sense." "Sir?" "Definitely in the best sense." His eyes studied her with an intensity that made her blush again. "Do you have family, besides the grandmother who raised you?" The question hit Amelia like a punch to the gut. It was a wound that had never fully healed, the feeling of being an incomplete person, without roots or a history of her own. "No, sir. It was just her and me." "And she never told you about your mother, about where you came from?" "Mrs. Clara used to say that some stories were better left in the past." Amelia's voice came out weaker than she would have liked, revealing a pain she tried to hide even from herself. Donovan nodded slowly, as if that answer confirmed something he already suspected. "Sometimes the past doesn't allow us that kindness," he said, more to himself than to her. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Eleanor, who appeared at the inner garden door with the tense face of someone who had witnessed something that shouldn't have happened. "Mr. Donovan, you have an important call waiting," she announced, casting a warning glance at Amelia. "Of course." He moved towards the door but paused as he passed Amelia. "Thank you for the music. It's been a long time since I remembered it." When he left, Eleanor approached the young woman with a severe expression. "Girl, what's this about chatting with the master as if you were his equal?" "He started the conversation, Eleanor. I didn't do anything wrong." "You haven't done anything wrong yet," the older woman corrected. "But listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. Mr. Donovan is not an ordinary man. He carries ghosts that would be better left undisturbed. And you have a face that might awaken memories he prefers to forget." "What memories?" Eleanor hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to her employer and protecting the girl she had taken under her wing. "His first wife was named Isadora. She died under complicated circumstances. And you have something of her in your face, in the way you move. I've heard him murmur her name when he sees you passing through the corridors." Amelia's blood ran cold. "I never knew he was married." "He was. And it didn't end well. That's why I'm telling you, keep your distance. Do your work, get your wages, but don't give him any reason to confuse what you are with what she was." That night, Amelia could barely sleep. Lying in her small attic room, she thought about her conversation with Donovan and Eleanor's warning words. There was something in the way he looked at her, an intensity that went beyond a master's casual curiosity for a maid. It was as if he knew her from somewhere, as if he was constantly comparing her to an image in his memory. Around 2 in the morning, she was awakened by a sound coming from somewhere below her room. They were slow, dragging footsteps echoing through the marble corridors. Amelia silently got up and pressed her ear to the door. The footsteps seemed to be heading towards the east wing, that part of the house that always remained locked. Curiosity overcame fear. Amelia opened her bedroom door just a crack and peered into the corridor. A faint light danced on the walls, casting shadows that moved like ghosts. It was Donovan, walking slowly with a candle in his hand, wearing only white linen trousers. His bare torso revealed scars she had never imagined, marks that told stories of pain and violence that didn't align with the image of the successful businessman he projected during the day. He stopped before a door ornamented with bronze details and took a key from his pocket. Before entering, he looked back, and for a moment Amelia was sure he had seen her. But he said nothing, just disappeared behind the door, leaving the corridor plunged back into darkness. The next morning, Amelia woke up questioning if she had dreamt it all. But during breakfast, as she served coffee to Donovan, she noticed fresh scratches on his arms, as if he had struggled with something during the night. "Did you sleep well, sir?" she asked without thinking, immediately regretting the familiarity. He lifted his eyes from his cup and stared at her with that unsettling intensity. "Why do you ask?" I just noticed you seem tired." "Tired?" He repeated the word as if tasting it. "It's an interesting way to describe it. Most people would say troubled or haunted. "You don't seem haunted to me," Amelia said, surprising herself with her sincerity. "No?" He leaned slightly forward. "And what do I seem like to you, Amelia?" The question caught her off. God, it was too intimate, too dangerous. But there was something in his tone, a genuine need to be seen beyond the mask he wore, that made her answer with honesty. "You seem lonely." The silence that followed was deafening. Donovan studied her for a long moment, as if seeing her for the first time. "Lonely," he murmured. "Yes, that's a more precise word." Amelia realized she had crossed an invisible line, entered dangerous territory. But she couldn't completely regret it, because for the first time since she had arrived at that house, she felt she had truly seen the man behind the facade. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the mansion subtly changed. Donovan began appearing in the most unexpected places: in the library when Amelia was organizing books, in the kitchen when she helped Eleanor with dinner, in the garden when she watered the plants. He never said much, but his presence was undeniable, as if he were studying her, trying to decipher an enigma only he could see. Amelia, in turn, found herself paying more attention to him than she should have. She noticed when he ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he made when he was worried. She realized he always avoided the portrait of a blonde woman in the main hall, averting his gaze as if the image was too painful to contemplate. She observed how his shoulders tensed when the phone rang late at night, as if bad news was a constant expectation in his life. It was on a rainy Thursday in April that everything definitively changed. Amelia was cleaning Donovan's study when she found an envelope fallen behind one of the leather armchairs. As she picked it up, she saw it was addressed to Isadora Caldwell and bore a postmark from 5 years prior. The envelope was open, and before she could stop herself, Amelia saw the first lines of the letter. "My dear daughter," the correspondence began, "I know you chose to distance yourself from me after that terrible misunderstanding about the Sutton girl, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you." The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her quickly tuck the letter back into the envelope and place it on the table, pretending she was just doing routine cleaning. Donovan entered the study with his cell phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a low, tense tone with someone on the other end of the line. "No, the situation hasn't changed. She's still missing, and until we find the body, we can't declare a presumed death." He paused upon seeing Amelia in the room, but didn't stop speaking. "I know 5 years have passed, but you know the rules. No body, no death certificate." Amelia tried to discreetly leave the study, but Donovan gestured for her to stay, as if her presence didn't bother him. The conversation continued for a few more minutes, always in that somber, legal tone that spoke of inheritances, life insurance, and archived investigations. When he finally hung up the phone, the silence in the study was oppressive. "You heard?" he said. "It wasn't a question. It wasn't my intention, sir. I can leave if you prefer." "No." He approached her slowly, and Amelia noticed his hands trembled slightly. "You already know too much to pretend you know nothing. And perhaps it's better that way. Mr. Caldwell, I don't understand. Isadora was my wife. She disappeared 5 years ago on a stormy night much like tonight." He pointed to the window, where rain lashed violently against the glass. "She left only a note saying she could no longer live with this family's secrets." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. "And she was never found?" "Never, but you—" He stopped before her, so close she could feel the warmth emanating from his body. "You have something of her. Not just the physical resemblance, though that is unsettling. It's something deeper. The way you move through the house, as if you know every corner. As if you belong here. I don't understand what that means." "Nor do I." Donovan reached out and gently touched Amelia's face, a gesture so unexpected that she couldn't pull away. "But ever since you arrived here, I've been dreaming of her again. And in the dreams, you two are together, speaking of secrets I cannot hear." The intensity of the moment was broken by the sound of thunder outside. Donovan recoiled his hand as if burned, and Amelia realized she was trembling. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I shouldn't have—" That was inappropriate. But Amelia wasn't thinking about the impropriety of the gesture. She was thinking about the strange familiarity she had felt when he touched her, as if his hands had known that face for a long time. And she was thinking about the letter she had seen, with that mysterious reference to the Sutton girl. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, with a courage she didn't know she possessed, Did you know my family before I came to work here? The question hit Donovan like a bolt of lightning. His face paled, and for a moment he looked like a much older, wearier man. Why do you ask that? I saw a letter addressed to your wife. It mentioned a Sutton girl. And ever since I arrived here, I've had the feeling that I've been in this place before, even though that's impossible. Donovan closed his eyes and sighed deeply. There are things about this family, about this house, that are better left in the past, Amelia. Secrets that can destroy lives. But if those secrets involve my life, don't I have the right to know? He looked at her for a long moment, as if making a decision that would change everything for both of them. Come with me, he said finally. There's something you need to see. Donovan led her through the mansion's corridors along a path Amelia had never taken. They passed by somber portraits of Caldwell ancestors, who seemed to judge them with their painted eyes, by shelves filled with books in languages she didn't recognize, until they reached a dark wooden door ornamented with bronze details that she was sure she had never seen before. This is the wing that was built by my great-grandfather, Donovan explained, taking an old key from his pocket. He was a peculiar man. He believed that certain truths were too dangerous to be exposed to common light. The key turned in the lock with a click that echoed through the empty corridors. When the door opened, an aroma of old books, incense, and something faintly sweet invaded Amelia's nostrils. Donovan lit a series of candles arranged along the walls, revealing a narrower corridor that stretched into the darkness. What are we doing here? Amelia asked, her voice sounding weaker than she intended. Discovering who you truly are, he replied, beginning to walk down the corridor. The walls were covered with black and white photographs from different eras. Amelia recognized some faces as younger versions of Donovan, but there were other faces that stirred a strange sense of familiarity. Women of different generations, all with dark hair and expressive eyes, all wearing similar jewelry, a necklace with a key-shaped pendant that she had seen in dreams she didn't realize were memories. My God, she murmured, stopping before a photograph that made her feel as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. The woman in the photograph could have been her twin sister. The same wavy hair, the same delicate bone structure, the same large, expressive eyes. The only difference was the period dress and the handwritten caption, Helena Sutton, 1952. My grandmother, Donovan said softly, stopping beside her. Helena Sutton, who became Helena Caldwell when she married my grandfather Augustus. Amelia's world began to spin. Sutton, like me? It's no coincidence. He continued walking, leading her deeper into the corridor. Helena had a daughter before marrying my grandfather. Her girl she was forced to give up for adoption to protect her reputation in the English society of the 50s. That girl was named Caroline. The name of the mother Amelia never knew. The one her grandmother, Mrs. Clara, spoke of only in whispers and suppressed tears. You're saying my mother was your half-sister, Donovan completed, stopping before another door. Which means you are my distant cousin, Amelia. You always belonged to this family, even without knowing it. He opened the second door, revealing a room that seemed frozen in time. Furniture covered in white sheets, heavy curtains that blocked any trace of natural light, and in the center, an old writing desk covered with letters, photographs, and documents yellowed by time. This was Helena's room, Donovan explained, lighting more candles. After she died, my grandfather sealed this place. He said it was too sacred to be disturbed. But I always knew it was more than that. He was hiding something here. Amelia approached the writing desk with trembling legs. Among the papers, she recognized the careful handwriting she had seen in the letter addressed to Isadora. They were letters from Helena to Caroline, dozens of them, all unsent. My dear daughter, she read aloud, her own voice strange to her ears. Not a day passes that I don't think of you, that I don't regret the decision I was forced to make. Augustus promises me that once we are married, we can find you and bring you home. But the years pass and that promise remains just words. Keep reading, Donovan encouraged her, his own voice heavy with emotion. I discovered today that you have a daughter, my granddaughter, who doesn't even know I exist. Caroline, my heart breaks to know you followed the same path as I did, forced to entrust your child to other hands. But I swear by all that is sacred that I will find a way to bring both of you back to this family where you belong. Tears streamed freely down Amelia's face now. Her entire life, her whole sense of not belonging anywhere, of being an incomplete person finally made sense. She never managed to fulfill that promise, Donovan said softly. Helena died of pneumonia in the winter of 1955, shortly after writing that letter. My grandfather was devastated and sealed this room as a sanctuary for her, but the letters remained here along with something else. He went to an old dresser and from it removed an ornate jewelry box. When he opened it, Amelia saw the same necklace she had recognized in the photographs, a delicate gold chain with a key-shaped pendant. This key opened Helena's personal diary, he explained, showing a small leather-bound book that was in the box. When I found all this a few years ago, I discovered the truth about our family. And about you. Amelia touched the necklace with trembling fingers. The moment the metal touched her skin, a strange sense of completeness enveloped her, as if a missing piece had finally found its place. How did you know I was descended from Helena? I didn't know for sure until today, Donovan admitted. But when you arrived here 3 years ago, something in me recognized you immediately. It was as if Helena had returned home. And then when I discreetly began investigating your origins, the pieces fell into place. He approached her now with an intimacy that hadn't existed before the revelation. Isadora discovered the truth shortly before she disappeared. She became obsessed with the idea that you represented a threat to her, to our marriage. She said I looked at you as if you were a ghost I wanted to embrace. And was it true? Amelia asked, lifting her face to look directly into his eyes. Yes, he confessed without hesitation, but not in the way she imagined. You were never just a maid to me, Amelia. From the very first day, it was as if a part of me that had been lost for a long time had finally returned. The silence that followed was charged with a tension that went far beyond physical attraction. It was the weight of generations of secrets finally being exposed, of two lonely souls discovering they had more in common than they had ever imagined. Was Isadora jealous of a dead woman? Amelia asked, trying to process all that information. Isadora was afraid, Donovan corrected. Afraid that you would awaken something in me that she could never touch. And she was right. Before Amelia could respond, he drew even closer, his hands finding her face with a delicacy that contrasted with the intensity of his eyes. Ever since you arrived here, I have fought against feelings I shouldn't have. Not just because you were my maid, but because I knew there was something deeper, more dangerous at play. And now, she asked, her breathing becoming erratic with his closeness, now I know you are family, that this house has always been yours by right, and that what I feel for you. He paused as if the next words were too difficult to utter. What I feel for you transcends any logic or social convention. Amelia felt as if she were on the edge of a precipice, knowing that any move she made would change her life forever. Donovan, I don't know how to process all of this. Then don't process it, he murmured, bringing his face closer to hers. Just feel. The kiss that followed was unlike anything Amelia had imagined in her most secret moments. It wasn't gentle or hesitant, but urgent, desperate, as if they were two people drowning and had found salvation in each other. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, while she clung to his shirt, as if he were the only solid thing in a world that had crumbled around her. When they finally separated, both were breathless, trembling from the intensity of the moment. This is madness, Amelia whispered against his lips. The madness would be to keep pretending this doesn't exist between us, he replied, kissing her forehead softly. Amelia, I spent years trying to understand why my marriage to Isadora never worked, why I always felt as if I was living someone else's life. Now I know it was because I was waiting for you, but people will talk. The social difference, the fact that I was your maid, people always talk, Donovan said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But you are no longer my maid. You are the rightful heir to this estate as much as I am. Helena left instructions in her diary, saying that if her daughter or her descendants were ever found, they should receive an equal share of the Caldwell inheritance. The revelation hit Amelia as another shock. You're saying you are wealthy, Amelia. You always have been, you just didn't know it. The shares my grandfather left for Helena, the investments he made in her name, all of it has been waiting for you for decades. Amelia pulled away from him, trying to organize her thoughts. It was too much to process all at once, discovering she had a family, an inheritance, that the man she had secretly fallen in love with felt the same way about her. I need air, she said. heading for the door. "Amelia, wait!" Donovan called after her, but she was already leaving the room. She ran through the mansion's corridors with no certain destination, passing familiar rooms that now seemed entirely different. Every piece of furniture, every painting, every ornament now carried a personal meaning she hadn't understood before. This wasn't just the house where she worked. It was the house that should have been hers since birth. She ended up in the inner garden, the same place where Donovan had found her singing weeks before. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy with dark clouds that promised more storm. She sat on the stone bench in the center of the garden and tried to organize her thoughts. "Running away won't make the truth disappear," Eleanor's voice said from behind her. Amelia turned, seeing the older woman standing at the garden entrance with an expression that mixed concern and something she couldn't quite identify. "You knew," Amelia said. It wasn't a question. "I suspected," Eleanor admitted, approaching and sitting beside her on the bench. "When you arrived here, it was like seeing a ghost, not just because of the physical resemblance to Helena, but because of the way you moved through the house, as if your feet knew every step, every corridor." "Why did you never say anything?" "Because it wasn't my secret to tell. And because I was afraid of what might happen if the truth were revealed." Eleanor sighed deeply. "You need to understand one thing about this family, girl. The Caldwells are cursed by love. Each generation loses someone tragically, violently. Helena died young. Donovan's mother committed suicide when he was only 12. Isadora disappeared. It's as if this house consumes the women who dare to love its men." A shiver ran down Amelia's spine. "Are you trying to scare me?" "I'm trying to protect you," Eleanor said firmly. "Donovan is a good man, but he carries the weight of all these deaths. And now, discovering that you are family, that you have a right to all of this," she gestured to the mansion around them, "there are people who won't be happy with this revelation." "What people?" "Isadora's family, for a start. They always expected to inherit everything when Donovan died, as there are no direct heirs. And there are others, business partners, corrupt politicians who made shady deals with Donovan's father. People who benefit from Donovan being the sole lonely and controllable heir." Amelia felt a knot in her stomach. "Do you think Isadora was murdered?" Eleanor hesitated before answering. "I think Isadora discovered things she shouldn't have, and I think you're running the same risk." At that moment, Donovan appeared at the garden entrance. His face was tense and he held a phone in his hand. "We need to talk," he said to Amelia, casting a significant glance at Eleanor. "Now, has something happened?" Amelia asked, rising from the bench. "My solicitor just called me. Someone has filed a petition in court, questioning the legitimacy of the Caldwell inheritance. They are alleging irregularities in the original documents and requesting a full investigation of all family assets." Eleanor and Amelia exchanged a meaningful glance. "When was this filed?" Eleanor asked. "This morning, a few hours after I showed Helena's documents to Amelia." Donovan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture Amelia now recognized as a sign of extreme stress. "Someone is watching us. Someone knew we would discover the truth about Amelia's lineage. Or someone is trying to get ahead of you before you make any legal move to recognize her as an heir," Eleanor suggested darkly. Amelia felt the world spinning around her again. In a few hours she had discovered she had a family, an inheritance, a man who loved her, and now she discovered that all of it could be taken from her before she could even fully comprehend what it meant. "What do we do now?" she asked. Donovan approached her, taking her hands in his. "We fight," he said with determination, "for our rights, for our family, for us. But if the people Eleanor spoke of are willing to kill to protect their interests, then we have to be smarter than them," Donovan interrupted. "And faster," he turned to Eleanor. "I need you to do something for me. Go to the town registrar's office and get copies of all documents related to the Caldwell estate from the last 50 years, especially anything that mentions Helena Sutton or her descendants. And you two? What are you going to do?" "We're going to the capital," Donovan replied. "I have contacts in Washington, D.C. who can expedite the process of legally recognizing Amelia as an heir. The more official we make this, the harder it will be for our enemies to challenge it." Amelia felt a mix of fear and excitement coursing through her veins. For the first time in her life, she was fighting for something that truly mattered, alongside someone who saw her as an equal. "When do we leave?" she asked. "Now," Donovan replied. "Take only what's necessary. We don't know who might be watching the house." As Amelia hurried to her room to pack a bag, her mind was buzzing with everything she had discovered. It was as if her real life was just beginning, but at the same time, she felt the weight of a family inheritance that included tragedies, secrets, and dangers she didn't yet fully comprehend. When she came down with her small bag, she found Donovan waiting for her in the main hall. He had changed his casual clothes for a dark suit that accentuated his imposing presence, and carried a leather briefcase that she assumed contained the important documents. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted honestly. "But we're going anyway." He smiled for the first time since he had received the call from the solicitor. "That's the Caldwell attitude I expected to see." As they left the mansion towards Donovan's car, a black sedan that seemed more suited for a funeral than a romantic trip, Amelia looked back one last time. The imposing Gothic structure rose against the stormy sky like a castle from a dark fairy tale, and she couldn't shake the feeling that when she returned, nothing would ever be the same. "Are you scared?" Donovan asked as he drove down the winding road leading away from the estate. "Terrified," she confessed, "but also excited. It's strange to discover you have an entire family you never knew about. And to discover you're in love with a member of that family," he asked with a sideways smile. Amelia blushed but didn't look away. "That too. For the record," he said, becoming more serious, "I am also in love, deeply, irrevocably in love with a woman who appeared in my life disguised as a domestic helper and who is in fact the person I've been waiting for my entire life." Amelia's heart pounded at those words. "Donovan, I know it's complicated. I know there are obstacles we need to overcome. But once we resolve this entire legal situation, once you are officially recognized as a Caldwell heir, I want to do this properly." He glanced at her quickly before returning his attention to the road. "I want to court you properly. I want to take you to dinner, introduce you to society as the woman I love, not as the maid who happened to fall for her employer. And if they discover we're distant cousins? Won't people find that strange?" "People always find something to find strange," Donovan said pragmatically. "But third cousins barely count as kinship in the circles we frequent, especially considering Helena was never officially recognized as a Caldwell." They drove in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Amelia watched the familiar landscape of the English countryside pass by the window, farms, small towns, vegetation-covered mountains, and wondered how her life had changed so drastically in just one day. "Can I ask a question?" she said finally. "Anything. Do you really think Isadora was murdered?" Donovan's jaw tensed. "I think Isadora asked too many questions of the wrong people. And I think when you have as much money and power as our family does, there are always people willing to kill to protect their own interests. But if that's true, then we're also in danger." "Possibly," he admitted. "That's why we're going to resolve this quickly and very publicly. The more people know about you, your lineage, and your legal rights, the harder it will be for someone to simply make you disappear." The idea that someone might want to kill her was so absurd that Amelia almost laughed. 3 days prior, she was just an orphan domestic helper, whom no one would notice if she disappeared. Now apparently, she was a millionaire heiress with powerful enemies she didn't even know existed. "This feels like a movie," she murmured. "Welcome to the Caldwell family," Donovan said with dark irony, "where reality has always been stranger than fiction." When they reached the main highway, Amelia noticed a black car in the rearview mirror that seemed to have been following them since they left the estate. She said nothing initially, not wanting to seem paranoid. But after 20 minutes on the road, the car was still there. "Donovan," she said carefully, "that car behind her." "I know," he replied, his eyes alternating between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. "They've been following us since we left the house." The fear Amelia had managed to keep under control finally overwhelmed her. "What do we do?" "First we try to lose them," Donovan said, accelerating slightly. "If we can't, we improvise." He took the next highway exit, turning onto a secondary road that snaked through a small town. The black car followed them, maintaining a distance that was neither too close nor too far, exactly as a professional tale would do. They're professionals. Donovan murmured, more to himself than to her. How do you know? Because if they were just curious onlookers or journalists, they would have given up or tried to get closer by now. These ones are maintaining the perfect distance not to be detected by someone less observant. Amelia felt her mouth go dry. What do they want? Probably to follow us to where we're meeting my solicitor, to discover our legal strategy. Donovan took a sharp turn, entering a residential street. Or perhaps they want to wait until we're isolated enough for something more direct. He didn't need to specify what something more direct meant. Amelia understood perfectly. Is there a police station in this town? She asked. Good idea. Donovan smiled approvingly. Let's see if our friends have the courage to follow. Girls to the police. They drove through the streets of the small town until they found the local police station, a small but well-maintained building with several patrol cars parked out front. Donovan parked directly in front of the main entrance, and the car that was following them drove past slowly, without stopping. But Amelia managed to see two men in dark suits inside. Did you see their faces? Donovan asked. Not clearly, but they didn't look local. Too well dressed for a small town like this. Agreed. He pulled his cell phone from his pocket. I'll call my solicitor and warn him that there might be complications, and perhaps it's better if we change our plans. What do you mean? Instead of going directly to Washington, D.C., we'll take a longer route. I want to make sure we're not being followed when we get there. He paused, looking at her with a worried expression. Amelia, are you still willing to go through with this? Because if you've changed your mind, I would perfectly understand. She looked at the man beside her, that man who, until a few days ago, was just her distant and unattainable employer, and who had now revealed himself to be her family, her love, and possibly her partner, in a dangerous fight for rights she didn't even know she possessed. The choice when presented that way was surprisingly easy. I haven't changed my mind, she said firmly. This is my family, my inheritance, my life. No one has the right to take that from me. The smile Donovan gave her made all the risks they were facing worthwhile. Then we'll do this our way, he said, starting the car again. Welcome to the Fight Caldwell Air. The hotel in Washington, D.C. was the kind of establishment Amelia had never imagined stepping into. 5 stars, a marble lobby that echoed footsteps like a cathedral, and staff who treated every guest as if they were royalty. Donovan had reserved the presidential suite on the top floor, claiming they needed privacy and security. But Amelia suspected he also wanted to show her the world to which she now rightfully belonged. I've never stayed in a place like this, she confessed as the private elevator silently ascended to the 25th floor. Get used to it, Donovan said, observing her with that intense gaze that had become familiar. From now on, you'll have to get used to many new things. When the elevator doors opened directly into the suite, Amelia had to steady herself against the wall to keep from swaying. The space was larger than the entire house where she had lived with her grandmother. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the federal capital. Contemporary design furniture shared the space with artwork she suspected were worth more than a lifetime's salary. And the sophisticated grey and gold decor created an atmosphere that was both luxurious and welcoming. My God, she murmured, walking towards the windows. You can see the entire city from here. Donovan approached from behind, placing his hands on her shoulders. Amelia, you need to understand one thing. All of this, the money, the luxury, the power, has always been yours by right. You're not being elevated to a position you don't deserve. You're merely reclaiming what should have been yours since birth. She turned to face him, still trying to process the magnitude of the changes in her life. How can you be so calm about all this? Yesterday I was your maid, today I'm your... What are we now, exactly? The question hung in the air between them, charged with all the implications neither of them had fully stopped to consider. Donovan brushed a strand of hair from her face, a gesture that had become natural, intimate. We are two people who found each other despite all circumstances conspiring against us, he said softly. We are family, we are partners, we are... He hesitated as if the next words were too precious to be uttered lightly. We are two souls who recognized each other. The suite's phone rang before Amelia could answer, and Donovan picked up with an immediately tense expression. Dr. Vance. Yes, we just arrived. What do you mean intercepted? When? His voice grew increasingly grave as he listened to the caller. I understand. So yes, we'll be there in an hour. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "Trouble?" Amelia asked, though the answer was obvious. Someone obtained an injunction preventing any alteration to the Caldwell family property records until a full investigation is concluded. The petition alleges evidence of document fraud and misappropriation of assets. Amelia felt her stomach sink. Does that mean I can't be recognized as an heir? Not officially, not until we resolve this. Donovan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of extreme stress. But Dr. Vance has a strategy. We need to meet him at his office now. Dr. Henry Vance's office was located in one of Washington, D.C.'s most imposing downtown buildings, a glass and steel tower that reflected the capital's blue sky. The solicitor was a man in his 60s, with impeccably groomed grey hair and a suit that likely cost more than many people's cars. But his eyes were kind when he greeted Amelia, and she immediately understood why Donovan trusted him. "Miss Sutton," he said, kissing her hand in a chivalrous manner. "It's a pleasure to finally meet Helena's granddaughter. You have her eyes. Did you know her?" "Briefly, when I was very young and had just graduated. My father represented the Caldwell family for decades, and I took over his clients when he retired." Dr. Vance gestured for them to sit in the leather armchairs facing his desk. "Helena was always a legend in our firm, the woman who could have changed the Caldwell's destiny had she lived longer." "Dr. Vance," Donovan interrupted, "we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Who initiated this legal action?" "Officially a law firm from Manchester, representing interested parties in the Caldwell succession," the solicitor replied, opening a voluminous folder. "Unofficially, I've traced the funding to a group of investors who have lucrative contracts with your company, Donovan. Contracts that would be automatically cancelled if the family's ownership structure changed." "How much money are we talking about?" Amelia asked. "Hundreds of millions of pounds over the next 10 years, Dr. Vance replied grimly. These contracts were signed on the assumption that Donovan would remain the sole heir, with no children or close relatives. Amelia's existence, and especially her status as a legitimate heir, would jeopardize all these agreements. Donovan leaned forward. "What kind of evidence do they claim to have?" "Here's where it gets interesting," Dr. Vance said, pulling some documents from the folder. "They claim to have evidence that Helena Sutton never existed, that she was an identity created to cover up irregularities in the family's original property records." "That's absurd," Amelia said indignantly. "I have her letters, the photographs. I know, my dear. And that's exactly why we're going to win this battle." The solicitor smiled in a way that reminded her of a shark that had smelled blood. "Because while they were busy creating conspiracy theories about Helena, I've been busy gathering concrete evidence of her existence and her legal rights." He opened another folder, revealing photographs, certificates, church records, and even old newspaper clippings. Helena Sutton not only existed, but was a relatively well-known figure in English society of the 50s. There are records of her participation in charity events, photographs of her in newspapers of the time, and even, he paused dramatically, a marriage certificate. Donovan and Amelia exchanged confused glances. "Marriage certificate?" Donovan asked. "But she married my grandfather." "Yes, but before that she secretly married Caroline's father civilly, your mother's father, Amelia." Dr. Vance pointed to a yellow document. "The marriage was later annulled, but Caroline was legitimized before the annulment, meaning she had full legal rights as Helena's daughter." "And those rights pass to me?" Amelia asked, her heart pounding. "Not only do they pass, but they are unquestionable. Helena left a will that was never executed because they couldn't locate Caroline or her descendants. But now that you've been found," Dr. Vance smiled triumphantly, "you are not just an heir, Amelia. You are the primary heir." The silence in the office was broken only by the sound of the air conditioning. Amelia felt as if the world had stopped spinning. "Primary how?" she asked faintly. "Helena inherited 60% of the Caldwell fortune when she married Augustus, on the condition that if her direct descendants were ever found, they would inherit her share in full. The other 40% belongs to Donovan by direct paternal lineage." Donovan chuckled, but it was a sound of pure admiration. "Are you telling me Amelia is technically richer than I am?" "Substantially richer," Dr. Vance confirmed, "and that's why our adversaries are desperate to prevent her legal recognition. If she is officially recognized, She not only inherits Helena's fortune, but also assumes majority control of all the family's companies. Amelia stood up abruptly, walking towards the office windows. The view of Washington, D.C. stretched before her. Government buildings, wide avenues, the constant movement of a functioning capital. But she wasn't seeing any of it. She was trying to process the fact that in less than 24 hours she had discovered she was not only wealthy, but one of the richest women in the country. Amelia? Donovan approached her, his voice heavy with concern. "How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed," she admitted. "Yesterday I was worried about having enough money to buy new shoes. Today I discover I can buy the whole store. And how do you feel about that?" She turned to look at him, seeing the genuine concern in his eyes. "Scared, excited, confused," she paused. "And guilty. Guilty? Because of you. This changes everything between us, doesn't it? When I thought we were equal in terms of inheritance, it seemed possible, but now—" Donovan interrupted her, taking her face in his hands. "Now nothing has changed about what we feel for each other. Do you think I care who has more money? You should care. Men care about those things. I am not men," he said firmly. "I am the man who is madly in love with you, regardless of how many zeros are in your bank account." Dr. Vance cleared his throat delicately behind them. "Forgive the interruption, but we need to discuss the legal strategy. And there's something else you need to know." They turned to him, and Amelia noticed his expression had become graver. "They found Isadora's body," he said bluntly. The silence in the office became oppressive. Donovan visibly paled, and Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. "Where?" Donovan asked, his voice hoarse. "On a rural property about 30 miles from Caldwell Manor. The body had been buried for at least 5 years, but identification was confirmed by dental records." "How did she die?" Dr. Vance hesitated before answering. "Blunt force trauma to the head. The police are treating it as homicide." Amelia sat down heavily in one of the armchairs. "Does this mean Donovan will be a suspect?" "Unfortunately, yes. The husband is always the first suspect in cases like this, but—" Dr. Vance opened another folder. "There's evidence that could complicate things even further." "What evidence?" "Isadora was pregnant when she died, approximately 3 months along." Donovan staggered as if he had been punched. "Pregnant? But that's impossible. We tried to have children for years, and she never managed to conceive." "The fetal DNA tests are still being conducted," Dr. Vance continued carefully. "But if they confirm that Donovan is not the father—" "Then she was having an affair," Amelia completed, immediately understanding the implications. "And that would give Donovan a motive to kill her." Dr. Vance nodded grimly. "At least that's how the prosecution will present the case." Donovan moved away from them, walking towards the window with stiff steps. His hands were clenched into fists, and Amelia could see the tension in every line of his body. "I didn't kill her," he said in a low but clear voice. "No matter what she did, I would never raise a hand to a woman." "I believe you," Amelia said immediately, surprising herself with the certainty in her own voice. "But the evidence can be manipulated," Dr. Vance interrupted. "And I suspect that's exactly what happened. The timing is too convenient, finding the body exactly when Amelia is being recognized as an heir." "Do you think someone hid the body for 5 years and exposed it now on purpose?" Donovan asked, turning to face them. "I think someone killed Isadora 5 years ago and kept this card up their sleeve to use when it was necessary to discredit you or force you to make concessions." Amelia stood up, feeling a determination grow within her. "Then we need to find the real killer." "Amelia, this is not a game," Donovan said, approaching her. "We are dealing with dangerous people who have killed once and won't hesitate to kill again." "Precisely why we need to act," she replied firmly. "They are using Isadora's death to destroy your reputation and prevent me from claiming my inheritance. If we remain passive, they win." Dr. Vance leaned forward. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to investigate the contracts you mentioned, those that would be cancelled. If I were recognized as an heir, who are these people specifically? What kind of businesses do they conduct?" "Amelia," Donovan said with a warning tone, "you don't know what you're getting into." "Then teach me," she replied, looking directly into his eyes. "You said we're partners, so be my partner for real. Stop trying to protect me and start treating me as an equal." The intensity in her voice clearly impressed him. After a moment, he nodded slowly. "Dr. Vance, we want all the information about these contracts. Names, values, execution details, everything." "This could be dangerous," the solicitor warned. "More dangerous than being accused of murder?" Donovan asked rhetorically. 2 hours later, they were back in the hotel suite, with a mountain of documents spread across the dining table. Amelia studied the contracts with a concentration that surprised even herself, taking notes and making connections between different businesses and people. "This one here," she said, pointing to a specific document. "Whitestone Mining, they have a contract to extract iron ore from lands that technically belong to Helena's inheritance." "And this one," Donovan added, picking up another paper. "Brooks Construction, they built a shopping center in Manchester, using a loan secured by Caldwell Properties. If the ownership structure changes, the loan becomes immediately due." "All these companies have something in common," Amelia observed, organizing the documents into piles. "They benefit from you being the sole heir and, presumably, having no direct personal interest in the specific properties they are using. But if you take control, I can cancel all these contracts and renegotiate much more favorable terms for the family." Amelia leaned back in her chair, finally understanding the magnitude of the financial interests involved. "We're talking about billions of pounds in the long term." Donovan watched her with growing admiration. "You have a talent for this. For business, I mean." "I grew up poor," she said pragmatically. "You learn quickly to recognize when someone is trying to take advantage of you." The moment of tranquility between them was interrupted by Donovan's cell phone ringing. He looked at the screen and frowned. "Eleanor," he said as he answered. "How are things there?" Amelia couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she saw Donovan's face grow increasingly tense. "Are you sure? When did this happen?" He paused. "No, don't go back to the house tonight. Stay in town at a hotel. I'll transfer money to your account." When he hung up, his expression was grim. "The manor was broken into," he said. "Eleanor went back to get a few things and found the place ransacked. They didn't take anything of obvious value, but they searched every room." "They were looking for something specific," Amelia said immediately. "Or planting something," Donovan added grimly. "False evidence, listening devices, anything that could compromise us further." Amelia felt the fear she had managed to keep under control finally overwhelm her. The situation was escalating rapidly, and she began to realize that she might have underestimated how dangerous the people they were dealing with were. "Donovan," she said softly, "perhaps you should distance yourself from me. If I renounced the inheritance, if I disappeared." "No," he said immediately, approaching her. "We won't let them win out of fear." "But if something happens to you because of me?" He interrupted her, taking her face in his hands. "Amelia, listen to me. I've spent my entire life feeling incomplete, as if an essential part of me was missing. When you appeared, when we discovered our connection, for the first time everything made sense. I won't give up on you. I won't give up on us." The intensity in his eyes made Amelia's heart pound. It was as if he was seeing directly into her soul, and she realized she felt exactly the same way about him. "I love you," she said, the words escaping before she could fully think them. "I know it's madness that it happened too fast, but I love you." In response, he kissed her with a passion that made her knees buckle. It was different from the kiss in Helena's room. This one was urgent, desperate, laden with the weight of the realization that they might not have much time together. When they separated, both were breathless. "I love you too," he murmured against her lips. "More than I ever imagined it was possible to love someone." The sexual tension that had been building between them since the first moment finally became unbearable. Amelia pulled his shirt from his trousers, her hands exploring the torso she had secretly admired for so long. He moaned softly, his own hands finding the buttons of her blouse. "Are you sure?" he asked, giving her one last chance to pull back. "I've never been more sure of anything in my entire life," she replied, pulling him closer. What followed was unlike anything Amelia had imagined about physical intimacy. It wasn't just sex. It was a fusion of souls that had recognized each other after a lifetime of searching. Donovan was gentle yet passionate, patient yet urgent, as if he wanted to memorize every inch of her body, every breath, every accelerated heartbeat. When they finally united completely, Amelia understood why she had waited so long for this moment. It wasn't just about finding the right man. It was about finding her other half, the person who completed not just her body but her essence. Afterward, lying entwined in the suite's king-size bed, with the city lights twinkling outside the windows, Amelia felt utterly different, not just physically but emotionally, spiritually. It was as if a new version of herself had been born in Donovan's arms. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, running his fingers through her hair. "That my whole life made sense in this moment," she answered honestly. "All the losses, all the loneliness, all the moments I felt lost. Everything brought me here to you." "Helena would have been proud," he said softly. "She always believed that true love was the only treasure that truly mattered." "How do you know that?" "It's written in all the letters she left for her daughter. All wealth, all property, everything she built was to ensure that her descendants could choose love for love's sake, not out of necessity or convenience." Amelia propped herself on her elbow to look at him. "So she would bless us, even though we're technically cousins?" "I think she planned it," Donovan said with a smile. "I think somehow she knew that one day a Caldwell would find a Sutton, and that together they would be stronger than anyone could be alone." The romantic moment was interrupted by the sound of the suite's telephone. Donovan looked at the clock on the bedside table. Past midnight. "Who would call at this hour?" Amelia asked. Donovan answered the phone cautiously. "Hello?" Amelia watched his expression change drastically, from confusion to shock, and then to something she could only describe as terror. "Yes," he said in a low voice. "Yes, I understand. We'll be there." When he hung up, he was visibly shaken. "Donovan? What happened?" "It was the police," he said, already getting out of bed. "They want me to go to the station now to give a statement about Isadora's murder." "Now? In the middle of the night?" "Apparently the DNA test results have come in." He began to dress quickly. "The baby Isadora was expecting was not mine." "That's good, isn't it? It proves you had reason to be upset, but also that she had been lying to you for months." Donovan stopped dressing and stared at her. "No, Amelia, it's much worse than that." "Why?" "Because according to the DNA tests, the father of the baby Isadora was expecting." He paused as if the words were too difficult to utter. "Was my own father." The silence in the suite was absolute. Amelia felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. "Your father? But he's been dead for 6 years, Donovan completed. "Which means Isadora was having an affair with him shortly before he died. And she never told me." The magnitude of the betrayal was written on every line of his face. Not only had Isadora betrayed their marriage, but she had betrayed it with his own father, a man Donovan had admired and respected despite all his flaws. "Donovan, I'm so sorry," Amelia said, approaching him. "Now I understand why she disappeared," he continued, more to himself than to her. "It wasn't just guilt over having an affair. It was shame over being pregnant with her own father-in-law's child, and fear of how I would react if I found out. But you didn't know at the time, so you couldn't have killed her for that." "No," he said grimly, "but someone knew. Someone discovered the secret and killed her to protect the family's reputation, or to use that information as a weapon against me later." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you think it was the same person who is trying to prevent my recognition as an heir?" "I'm sure," Donovan said, finishing dressing. "And now they're raising the stakes. If they can't intimidate me with legal proceedings, they'll try to destroy me with criminal charges." "I'm coming with you," Amelia said, also starting to get dressed. "No, it's too dangerous. If they're willing to kill once—" "We're not discussing this," she interrupted firmly. "We're partners, remember? For better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in freedom and when accused of murder." Despite the gravity of the situation, Donovan almost smiled. That sounded suspiciously like wedding vows. "Perhaps because it is exactly that," Amelia said, approaching and adjusting his tie. "We may not have done it officially yet, but my heart has already made those vows." He kissed her gently, a stark contrast to the desperate passion of hours earlier. This kiss was a promise, a commitment, a declaration that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together. "Then let's go," he said, offering her his arm. "Let's find out who killed Isadora and why, and let's ensure our story ends differently from hers." As they left the suite towards the elevator, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking directly into a trap. But she also knew she had no choice. Her new life, her new love, her new family, everything depended on them discovering the truth and surviving to tell the story. The elevator descended silently through the 25 floors, carrying them back to the real world, where unknown enemies awaited them in the shadows. But this time they weren't facing the danger alone. They had each other, and that would have to be enough. The Washington, D.C. police station at 2 in the morning had the grim atmosphere of all places where justice tries to operate at inconvenient hours. Cold fluorescent lights illuminated empty corridors where only a few duty officers moved with an air of weariness. Amelia held Donovan's hand as they waited in the reception room, feeling the tension radiating from him like heat waves. "Mr. Caldwell?" called a woman of approximately 50, with grey hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that had seen many dark stories. "Detective Inspector Francis Oliver. Thank you for coming so quickly." "It doesn't seem like we had much choice," Donovan replied, standing up. Amelia rose with him, but the detective inspector raised her hand. "Miss Sutton, it would be better if you waited here. We need to speak with Mr. Caldwell privately." "She stays," Donovan said firmly. "What you have to say to me, you can say in front of her. We are partners in every aspect." The detective inspector studied Amelia with curiosity. "The maid who became an heiress. Yes, we've been informed about the recent developments in your family situation." "By whom?" Amelia asked, feeling a shiver of suspicion. "We'll discuss that in the interrogation room," the detective inspector replied, leading them down a narrow corridor. The room was small and claustrophobic, with a metal table, 3 uncomfortable chairs, and a camera in the upper corner that blinked discreetly. The detective inspector activated a recorder and sat facing them. "Mr. Caldwell, I need you to tell me about the last few months of your marriage to Isadora," she began without preamble. Donovan took a deep breath before responding. "We were distant. We had tried to have children for years without success, and that had put enormous strain on the relationship. She was different in the months before she disappeared. More nervous, more reserved. Different how? Thus, she would go out frequently without explaining where she was going. She received phone calls that she would hang up when I entered the room. And she was obsessed with the idea that someone was investigating our family." "Was someone?" Donovan looked at Amelia before answering. "I later discovered that my own father was having the family lineage investigated. He had hired a private detective to find possible forgotten heirs." The detective inspector made a note. "And do you think Isadora found out about this investigation?" "Now I think she discovered more than that," Donovan said grimly. "I think she discovered about the nature of her relationship with my father." "Did you know at the time that your wife was having a relationship with your father?" "Absolutely not," Donovan replied vehemently. "If I had known, I would never have allowed it to continue." "But would you have killed her for it?" The silence in the room became oppressive. Amelia felt Donovan's hand tremble slightly in hers. "I would have confronted her," he said finally. "I would have demanded explanations. I probably would have filed for divorce." "But kill?" He shook his head firmly. "Never." The detective inspector leaned back in her chair, studying him. "Mr. Caldwell, where were you on the night of March 15th, 2019? "I have no idea." "That was 5 years ago. It was the night Isadora disappeared. And coincidentally, it was also the night your father suffered the heart attack that killed him." Amelia felt her blood run cold. "Are you suggesting there's a connection?" "I'm suggesting that many people died or disappeared in a very short period of time," the detective inspector replied, "and that someone benefited greatly from these deaths." "Who?" Donovan asked. "That's the billion-pound question, isn't it?" a new voice said from the doorway. They turned to see a middle-aged man in an expensive suit and an expression that mixed arrogance with something Amelia could only describe as calculated cruelty. Dr. Richard Brooks. He introduced himself, extending his hand to the detective inspector, solicitor representing the interests of various parties affected by this investigation. Amelia recognized the surname immediately. Brooks, like the construction company that has contracts with the Caldwell family. "Very perceptive, Miss Sutton," Dr. Brooks said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, my family has a long business partnership with the Caldwells, a partnership that has been very lucrative for all involved." "Until now," Donovan said, immediately understanding the implication. "Exactly. Until now, Dr. Brooks sat in the remaining chair without being invited. You see, the death of Isadora and Mr. Augustus Caldwell created a very stable situation for our businesses. Donovan, as the sole heir, never took an interest in the operational details of the contracts, preferring to let things continue as they always had. And now? The detective inspector asked. Now we have a new heiress who is asking inconvenient questions about the legitimacy of our agreements, Dr. Brooks said, looking directly at Amelia. An heiress who, if officially recognized, would have the power to cancel contracts worth billions of pounds. So you admit you have a motive to prevent Amelia's legal recognition? Donovan asked. I have a motive to protect legitimate investments, Dr. Brooks corrected, and to ensure that the truth about what really happened 5 years ago finally comes to light. Amelia felt a growing sense of danger. What truth? Dr. Brooks opened a folder he had brought with him and took out several photographs. These were taken by a private investigator my father hired to monitor the Caldwell family's activities a few years ago. The photographs showed Isadora secretly meeting with an older man in different locations, restaurants, hotels, even at Caldwell Manor itself. Augustus Caldwell, the detective inspector identified. Yes, but it's not just about the extramarital affair, Dr. Brooks continued. It's about what Isadora discovered during that relationship. He placed another document on the table, photocopied pages from a diary. Isadora kept detailed records of her conversations with Augustus, and she discovered that he was planning to alter his will to include a clause that would automatically cancel all existing contracts if any heir questioned their legitimacy. Donovan leaned forward. My father wanted to get rid of you? Your father discovered that we were, shall we say, not being entirely honest about the real value of the properties we were using, Dr. Brooks admitted. He hired independent appraisers and found that we should have been paying at least 10 times more for the usage rights. So you killed him, Amelia said, the pieces finally falling into place. We didn't kill anyone, Dr. Brooks said calmly. Augustus died of a natural heart attack. But Isadora, he paused dramatically. Isadora became dangerously unstable after his death. She threatened to expose our partnership, cancel the contracts, even go to the media with stories about corruption in the Caldwell family. Then you killed her, Donovan said, his voice heavy with contained fury. We tried to negotiate with her first, Dr. Brooks continued as if discussing the weather. We offered money, properties, even a share of the profits. But she was pregnant and emotionally unstable. She said she wanted to clear the family name for the baby she was expecting. The detective inspector leaned forward. Mr. Brooks, are you confessing involvement in the murder of Isadora Caldwell? I'm explaining that Isadora Caldwell died accidentally during a heated discussion about the future of the family contracts, he said carefully, and that her body was hidden to protect all involved from an unnecessary scandal. Who specifically killed her? The detective inspector pressed. Dr. Brooks hesitated for the first time. My father, Richard Brooks Sr., was present during the discussion. Isadora became hysterical, started screaming, threatened to call the police. In the heat of the moment, there was a physical struggle, and she hit her head on the corner of a table. And you hid the body for 5 years, Amelia said, feeling nauseous. It was the only way to protect all involved interests. But now, with you appearing and claiming inheritance, our situation has become complicated. So you decided to use the body as a weapon against Donovan, the detective inspector concluded. We decided it was time for the truth to come out, Dr. Brooks corrected. Especially the truth about the Caldwell family's mental instability and why it might be dangerous to officially recognize new heirs. Amelia stood up abruptly. Are you trying to blackmail me? I'm offering a solution that benefits everyone, Dr. Brooks said, also standing. You renounce any claim to the Caldwell inheritance we ensure. Donovan is not accused of Isadora's murder, and everyone moves on with their lives. And if we refuse, Donovan asked, also standing now, then the investigation into Isadora's death might reveal very inconvenient evidence about the violent temperament that apparently runs in the Caldwell family, Dr. Brooks said with a cold smile. Especially considering we now have witnesses willing to swear they heard Donovan threaten his wife on the night she disappeared. False witnesses, Amelia said. Convincing witnesses, Dr. Brooks corrected. Respectable people who will merely be doing their civic duty by assisting justice. The detective inspector had remained silent throughout this exchange, but now she spoke. Dr. Brooks, you have just confessed participation in the cover-up of a murder. I recounted the facts of a tragic accident and the difficult decisions that were made to protect several respectable families. He corrected calmly. Decisions that my father, who died 2 years ago, made without my full knowledge at the time. Conveniently dead and unable to contest your version, Donovan observed. Life is rarely convenient, Mr. Caldwell, but sometimes it offers opportunities to resolve complicated situations in a way that benefits everyone. Amelia felt rage grow within her. This man was standing there, coldly confessing participation in the death of an innocent woman, trying to blackmail her family, and talking about it as if it were merely a business transaction. Detective Inspector Oliver, she said firmly, I presume all of this is being recorded. Every word, the detective inspector confirmed. Then Mr. Brooks has just provided enough evidence to prosecute his entire organization for murder, concealment of a body and extortion. Dr. Brooks laughed. Miss Sutton, do you really think it's that simple? My family has connections that span decades in the highest circles of politics and the judiciary. A recording can disappear. Witnesses can change their minds. Evidence can be questioned. Perhaps, the detective inspector said, standing up. But you made a fatal error, Dr. Brooks. What error? You presumed you were the only clever one in the room. She smiled for the first time since they had met her. This conversation isn't just being recorded here. It's being live-streamed to a special unit of the federal police that has been investigating your family for months. Dr. Brooks's face visibly paled. You see, the detective inspector continued, when we began investigating Isadora's death, we discovered similar patterns in several other suspicious deaths related to contractual disputes involving the Brooks family. You have a long history of making problems disappear. That's absurd, Dr. Brooks said. But his voice had lost its previous confidence. It's meticulously documented, a new voice said from the doorway. They turned to see Dr. Henry Vance entering the room, followed by 2 federal police agents. Dr. Vance? Amelia said, confused. How did you... I've been working with Detective Inspector Oliver for weeks, he explained. When Donovan came to me to regularize his situation, Amelia, I realized we finally had the opportunity to expose the entire network of corruption that has been parasitizing the Caldwell family for decades. You used us as bait, Donovan realized. I used you as catalysts, Dr. Vance corrected. We knew that when Amelia emerged as a legitimate heir, it would force our adversaries to act desperately. And desperate people make mistakes. One of the federal police agents approached Dr. Brooks, Richard Brooks, Jr. You are under arrest for criminal association, concealment of a body, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. As Dr. Brooks was handcuffed, he looked directly at Amelia. You have no idea what you've just unleashed. My family is just a small part of a much larger network. And now that you've become a threat, threats don't work when you're speaking from behind bars, Amelia replied calmly. And as for the larger network, I'm sure the federal police will be very interested in hearing everything you have to say about it. After Dr. Brooks was led away, the detective inspector addressed Donovan and Amelia. You are free to go. And, Mr. Caldwell, officially, you are no longer considered a suspect in your wife's death. And Amelia's inheritance? Donovan asked. With Brooks's confession and the evidence that the legal challenge was part of a criminal scheme, there are no longer any impediments to official recognition, Dr. Vance replied. In fact, there's a judge waiting to sign the documents as soon as we get to court in the morning. 3 hours later, they were back in the hotel suite, exhausted but finally free. Amelia collapsed onto the sofa, still trying to process everything that had happened. I still can't believe it's over, she said. Donovan sat beside her, pulling her into his arms. It's not entirely over yet. It will take time to dismantle the entire network of corruption, and we'll probably have to testify in several trials. But are we safe? We are safe, he confirmed, kissing the top of her head. And more importantly, we are free to be who we truly are. And who are we exactly? Amelia asked, lifting her face to look at him. "We are the next generation of the Caldwell family," he said seriously. "We are the ones who will clear the family name and use our fortune to make a difference in the world. We are the ones who fell in love, despite all odds against us." Amelia added. "Primarily that," Donovan agreed, kissing her softly. When they separated, Amelia noticed he suddenly seemed nervous. "What is it?" "There's something I want to ask you," he said, standing up and walking to his suitcase. "Something I should have asked a long time ago. If we hadn't been interrupted by murderers and blackmail." He returned with a small navy blue velvet box and knelt before her. "Donovan," Amelia murmured, her heart pounding. "Amelia Sutton Caldwell," he said, opening the box to reveal a dazzling engagement ring, a solitaire diamond surrounded by small emeralds. "You entered my life disguised as a maid, but in truth you were the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was making. You are my family, my partner, my soulmate. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed freely down Amelia's face now. "Yes," she whispered, then repeated louder. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and kissed her with all the passion and relief of two people who had faced the worst and survived to see the best. "How long have you had that ring?" she asked when they finally separated. "I bought it yesterday when you were studying the contracts," he admitted. "I knew, even with all the madness happening around us, that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, even not knowing if we would survive to have a future together. Especially not knowing that," he said, pulling her closer. "Life is uncertain, Amelia, but what I feel for you is the only certainty I need." 6 months later, Caldwell Manor was unrecognizable. The windows that had remained closed for decades now allowed sunlight to flood the rooms. Fresh flowers adorned every room, and the sound of laughter and conversation replaced the sepulchral silence that had dominated the house for so long. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asked as she adjusted Amelia's veil. "Terrified," Amelia admitted, looking at herself in the mirror of what had been Helena's room and was now her bridal chamber. "But also happier than I ever imagined possible." She wore Helena's own wedding dress, discovered in a trunk in the secret wing and carefully restored. The delicate lace and tiny pearls created a timeless silhouette that made her feel connected, not only to her past, but to the future she was building. "Helena would be proud," Eleanor said, arranging the flowers in Amelia's hair. "She always said that true love would find a way to flourish in this family, despite all the tragedy." "Do you think she knew, somehow, that I would come here?" "I think grandmothers always know more than they let us realize," Eleanor said with a mysterious smile. "And I think she arranged all of this from beyond." From the inner garden, now transformed into an open-air chapel, came the sounds of the orchestra Donovan had hired for the ceremony. Friends and family Amelia didn't even know existed had come from all over the country to celebrate not only their wedding, but also the restoration of the Caldwell name. In the months since Dr. Brooks's arrest and the dismantling of his criminal network, the family had become a symbol of justice and renewal. Amelia had used her new position and resources to establish a foundation dedicated to helping orphans find their families, while Donovan had completely restructured the family businesses, prioritizing ethical and sustainable practices. "It's time," Dr. Vance said, appearing at the door. He had offered to walk her down the aisle as she had no father to do the honors. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. "More than ready," Amelia replied, taking his arm. As they left the house towards the garden, Amelia saw the scene she had dreamt of without knowing she was dreaming. White chairs arranged in a semicircle around an altar, decorated with wildflowers. Guests dressed in their finest clothes, all smiling and whispering admiration. And at the altar, waiting for her with a smile that illuminated his entire face, was Donovan. He wore an impeccable tuxedo, but it was the expression in his eyes that made her stumble slightly. It was pure adoration, as if she were the most precious thing he had ever seen. As she walked down the makeshift aisle, Amelia thought of the incredible journey that had brought her there. 3 years prior, she had arrived at that house as an orphan with no family and no future. Now she was marrying the man she loved, surrounded by a family she never knew she had, with enough resources to make a difference in the world. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" the vicar asked when they reached the altar. "She gives herself," Dr. Vance replied as they had agreed, "as a free woman who chooses love for love's sake, not out of necessity or convenience. They were the words Helena had written in one of her letters, and Amelia felt the presence of her great-grandmother around her like a blessing. Donovan Alexander Caldwell, the vicar continued, do you take Amelia Helena Sutton to be your lawfully wedded wife, to love and to cherish, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, until death do you part? I do, Donovan said, his voice clear and firm, and I promise to protect her, support her, and love her with every beat of my heart for all eternity. Amelia Helena Sutton Caldwell, do you take Donovan Alexander Caldwell to be your lawfully wedded husband, to love and to cherish, in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, until death do you part? I do, Amelia said, looking directly into the blue eyes that had become her home. And I promise to be your partner in all adventures, your strength in all challenges, and your companion in all the dreams we will yet dream together. When they exchanged rings, simple gold bands engraved with each other's initials, Amelia felt as if a part of herself that had been lost her entire life had finally found its place. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife, the vicar announced. You may kiss the bride. The kiss that followed was different from all they had shared before. It was a promise, a commitment, a declaration to the world that they had chosen to build a life together. When they separated, the guests erupted in applause and cheers, but Amelia could only hear the accelerated beat of her own heart and the words Donovan murmured against her lips. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Caldwell. It's good to be home. Mr. Caldwell, she replied, smiling through happy tears. Later, during the party that stretched late into the night, Amelia found herself alone for a few minutes in the library, looking out the window at the gardens where their guests danced beneath the stars. No regrets? Donovan asked, approaching from behind and wrapping his arms around her. None, she replied, leaning back against his chest. And you? Only one, he said, making her turn to face him with concern. What is it? That it took us so long to find each other, he said with a smile. Imagine how many years of happiness we missed. We didn't miss anything, Amelia said, placing her hands on his face. Every experience we had, every pain we endured, every moment of loneliness we lived brought us here, to this perfect moment. Mrs. Caldwell, he said, kissing her ring, you're right, as always. I'll make sure to remind you of that for the next 50 years of marriage, she said, laughing. Only 50? I was counting on more time than that. Then you'd better take good care of me, she said, pulling him closer. That's the easiest promise I've ever made, he replied, sealing it with a kiss that held all the passion, all the love, and all the promises of a future built together. Outside, the party continued, but there in the library where it had all begun, when she was just a curious maid and he a lonely man guarding secrets, Amelia and Donovan danced their own silent dance. It was the dance of two souls who had recognized each other through all impossible circumstances, two people who had found in love not only happiness, but redemption. Caldwell Manor no longer slept. Now it breathed with the new life that had entered through its doors, pulsed with the love that had finally found its way through generations of tragedy, and whispered stories of hope to all future generations who would grow within its walls. And at the center of it all, Amelia and Donovan built not just a marriage, but a legacy of true love that had overcome all obstacles, a love that had transformed a mansion, haunted by secrets, into a home warmed by laughter, a love that proved that sometimes happy endings are not just possible, but inevitable. The story of the orphaned maid and the lonely master had become the legend of the courageous heiress and the man who learned that true love is worth more than any fortune. And they lived not just happily ever after, but deeply, passionately, completely ever after.